The first question, which was your favorite book and why? Well, my favorite book was L'Eterno de la Vita because you can find it almost all the stages of life in the social sense. It is about two young people who in their childhood were friends and for many years hadn't seen each other, but then they had the opportunity for meet again and remember everything they had lived. At the beginning of the story, it talks about a girl whose name is Jane Lori and who has decided to travel to Italy in order to see her great and best friend Bryce. She was very excited about the meeting and they both scheduled a date at a restaurant so they can catch up on their lives and reminiscence about their childhood moments. Jane gets ready, making herself as pretty as possible, and her clothes, her shoes, and hair were ready for the big date. Bryce made the restaurant reservation and wait for Jane, but she never showed up there, right? And he was disappointed about that, and he left the restaurant. And on his way out, he had a mishap in which he lost his wallet, which was found minutes later by a woman, a blonde woman, who would later give him and Jane a hard time. This woman named Ellie contacts Bryce to return the wallet. So they met and both were attracted to each other and exchanged their names, right? Then their time, Jane was a friend as nothing more, but in those days Jane had health relapses very strange for her since she had never suffered from any illness. It was a long process in which she needed Bryce to help her feel better. Ellie felt jealous of that Bryce was with Jane. So she made a jealous show of it and she complained to him saying that he wished he was never in Jane's place. Jane was only 6 months to live and at the end of so many events, Jane had a final relapse and was admitted to the hospital where despite medical efforts, she died before the time stipulated by the doctors. And for me, the romance of this story was what I liked the most. It had a good beginning and ending, and I could really read it again. The second question, make a comparison between two of the books, how they differ from each other, how similar are they, and point out positive and negative aspects. Well, the two books I will use to answer these questions are Beyond the Silence and Sacristalia, One Vacation to Forget. Among the difference that we can find, in the first book, most of the events that happen are in some way the result of conditions of poverty and have to find the characters have to find ways to survive, actions that also caused some misfortunes that live at home. And in the second book, the events happen as a result of the ceremonies of a religion that caused the death of almost all the visitors to the land where these events occurred. In the similarities are the same events, but this time they're very similar in both books because we can find death, physical violence, anguish, sadness that all the characters live in the course of the story. On the other hand, also religion takes place in both books. In the first one, the Christian belief, and in the second one, the religion called the Gate. The positive aspects in both books are given in the hope that the characters have despite all the bad things they believe they will overcome and have a way out of their problems. And the negative aspects in both books, and the characters suffer violence, which is very difficult to forget. The third question: which was the worst book from you and why? Well, for me, the worst book was Beyond the Silence. Why? Because although the subject or the topic matter, domestic violence and delinquency, is very interesting, the way the book was written has many spelling and grammatical errors or mistakes, and the story also feels very basic. In my opinion, the writer could have given the story a better shape, telling the same events and using the same characters but with a better development. As I said before, this book could have like a better shape, because for the reader it's kind of confusing or tired to find this kind of mistakes during the lecture, the reading, and the writer could improve their their way to write the story and include all the characters and the same events, but giving them like a better shape or a better kind of symbols or something like that, in which details that are not necessary will not be included in the, for example, in rewriting this story. And because at the beginning it mentions that the family, because it's about a family and a woman that had children, and they need to look for food, and they go to the forest to look for some things. And it mentions, because it is a story based in I think that it is based in a real situation, because it mentions some kind of foods or plants that we here in El Salvador use, but I think that there are no so necessary, or at least not mentioned so much, because we know, or at least two or three elements, and then specify that they are looking for food, right? And for me, that's my opinion regarding this story, that it could be improved, but it's a really interesting topic if the writer can give it like the correct way to do it. For the question number 5, that says point out the themes of one of the books and analyze them. The story that I will choose for this question is Sacristália, One Vacation to Forget. It has many themes that are really important. I consider that are really important during the story, and one of them is like the way in which one of the characters, in this case Richard, has like the ability to convince their friends to visit their place that is in, it says Sweden, in Switzerland. And the way in which this character convinced their friends is like something I don't know how to say, but creative, because they believe on him. They believe in their like suggestion to go to another place, to know to another culture, right? And that is one of the main thing for me, the way in which this character persuade their friends to know other his culture in this case, and the events that will happen in this celebration. Other thing that I could take it from this story is when they arrive to that place. First of all, it is so far from the city, because it says that there are 3 hours in the way from the airport to the place where they celebrate these events. And this is kind of scary for the characters, for the friends, because there are 4, and the other 3, that Jeff, Mike, and Boris, are like I don't know, like happy during the place, but there is just one, Leo, that is like confusing because he has a lot of questions about the culture, about the religion, about the events that will happen supposedly, and this is one of them. The other one is one, when the celebrations are ready. They are There are many things that are kind of rare in for them because they don't know anything about it, and also the man Soka that is like talking with Richard about the things that will do during the day. By the Richard and Soka, they do not want to tell them anything about it, but Leo is questioning about it and asking about what is going to happen to them. And during these events happen a lot of things that make desperate them. And the last one for me is the one who the last one, when one of them, Boris, well, all of them want to leave the place and they offer to take them to the airport one by one because there is no car there, just one motorcycle, but for that reason they just can take one by one. And Boris want to be the first one, but in a moment they notice that there are some noises away the place, the room where they are, and is Boris in an event where they cut his head. And those things are like the main point of this story, the traditions they have, cutting the heads of the visitors, and the only one that survived in that place is Leo, that has like the luck to leave that place and to live once more.